Okay, let's take a look at an acronym that's really useful as you are trying to maximize your application marks. In our AQA exam papers, we get lots of contextual information, for example, financial and other information in the case study text, the words that we get given, but perhaps more importantly, in the various appendices that we get given. An example there on the screen from the James Fitness case study in the download section, which is a classic paper 2 case study at the start of paper 2, where we've got some half a page of textual information, but then also followed by some charts and tables, lots of different types of data formats that is there to help you provide application for your answers. Obviously, sometimes you'll get given a specific calculation based on the data, but the important thing is that information is given for a reason, and often it's to help you use the information to apply the context to your arguments. So PADLS is a useful acronym to use and to remember when it comes to making the most of that data. So let's have a look and see what PADLS is all about. There it is on the screen. By the way, it's a download in the files section of the course if you want to download a PDF, print it off and put it into your folders. Let's quickly go through each of the 5 letters. P stands for patterns, and really perhaps this is the easiest thing to remember. When we're looking at data, for example, charts, sales forecasting, market share over time, any data that shows data over time, it's often easy to pick out some patterns or some trends in the data. And simply by highlighting what those trends are, highlighting what the patterns are, is a good way of showing application. Are the numbers going up? Are they going down? Are they consistently going up? Consistently going down? That's what we're looking for in terms of patterns and trends. A stands for anomalies, and this is where you can be quite smart with the data. Anomalies is where there is something unusual, out of the ordinary, a trend that stops, a pattern that's not repeated, for example. Is there something in the data that stands out? And often the examiner will put something in the data that they are hoping you might pick up on to help identify some useful context for your answers. For example, is there a low gross profit margin in 1 year? Or does the data for one business stand out compared with the competition or the industry average? D is data manipulation, and this is a really effective way of showing application. It's where you might take 2 pieces of data and manipulate them in some way, for example, by providing a calculation and then using that manipulated data to support your argument, often because you've provided a new piece of data that is more useful in terms of your argument. So a good example of that would be if the chart or the table gives you sales revenue and gross profit, well, why not calculate the gross profit margin? See what the number is and then use that gross profit margin as part of your analysis where relevant. That's a great example of data manipulation. It's not the only one. For example, you might be given some data on unit costs and perhaps linking that to a change in capacity utilization. So there's another good example of how we can use context, links and limitations. If you can find 2 pieces of data that in some way link to each other, or where one might explain or help explain the other, that's a great way, by linking that in your argument, just making reference to them in your arguments. That's another skill being showed there, application. You might also consider what limitations there are in the data. What's missing? Which data might be more useful? Are you given some information about the source or the sample size of the data? Sample size is a classic way of picking out some limitations in the data, particularly when it comes to making business decisions. So look out for those. And lastly, the S stands for support. In what way can we use the data, whether it be patterns, anomalies, data manipulation, links and limitations, or other ways in what way can we use that to support our argument? So we make an argument, perhaps also using this to support your evaluation, not just arguments. A really good way of just referencing back to the data to add some weight, add some credibility to your arguments and or evaluation is another great way of showing Application. Now, as we work our way through some worked answers to past exam questions and to, for example, the questions on James Fitness, we'll try to make reference to PADLS so you can see it in action. Cheers.